Cord to this computer. Hello, Anthony. How are you today?
Oh, I'm wonderful. This today actually kind of marks the pretty almost the end of my working calendar for the rest of 2025. So you're getting me very fresh and happy right now.
Oh, I was gonna say you must be in a great mood then.
I'm fantastic. I've just been floating through the day. So yeah, it's been good.
And a little birdie told me that next year you're like taking off to write a book or something, right?
Yeah, so and from January till May, I'll be on sabbatical as I'm finishing up a textbook that I've been working on for a while. And this will sort of be the big culminating final push to get that done. So not only is this sort of the end of my working 2025, but not that I won't be working in 2026, but for the first like 5 months or so of 2026, like I don't have to. I'm not teaching. I don't have to serve on any committees. Like my sort of traditional job responsibilities are excused while I'm working on this book, this textbook, and it hasn't hit me yet. It really won't probably hit me until January about just what's about to happen. So yeah, I am especially happy right now. So
That's so exciting. Okay, well, before we continue this conversation, let's like drop in with a breath together and
love it.
just come to the present moment. So, filling up through the nose, belly, chest, and head. Holding it at the top and sighing it out. Welcome.
Thank you.
Um, I'm your host, Juno. This is a conscious conversation with the House of H, and we are introducing today Anthony Dissen. And Anthony, can you introduce yourself to the people for us?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm Anthony Dissen. I am a queer educator and spiritualist. I do kind of, the day job, if you will, as I am a professor in health sciences and public health. I work with students that are interested in going in the healthcare field and both in clinical care and public health. So I work with students in all those different ways. And then I'm also a shamanistic and animistic a practitioner of different types of wisdom traditions of Devi yoga and psychedelic plant medicines, especially ayahuasca and psilocybin. These have been powerful teachers of mine and big spiritual technologies I've been working with for a while that sort of inform my spiritual work, which really has the last several years now really focused on queer spirituality and what does that mean to be a queer person who is spiritual? What does it mean to be what is the spiritual dimension of queerness and what does spiritual healing look like to us as queer people?
Well, welcome. That's so very exciting.
I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. Um, so you said something really interesting. Well, no, we're not going to start there because that's like starting at the end. Let's start at the beginning. Um, so early on in your life, because like you, like me, are loosely a product of like the early 2000s, 90s, like back when it was a little bit more fun, let's say. Like
I should say.
I like to say that the 90s, without the nostalgia frame on it, right? Without the lens of
Yeah,
nostalgia, it was like objectively some of the better times in recent human history.
it just was. Daniel and I talk about this, my partner and I talk about this at the time. We're like, we didn't know what a moment that was.
Yeah, right. I'm lucky we got to live through it. Like
Exactly.
we went to like, well, not with you at the time, but like I went to like the Roxy, Limelight, like all these historic kind of
Yeah,
places that are just not there anymore, and
out there anymore.
it's like sad but beautiful. It's like it's interesting.
Yes.
So growing up queer
Yes.
is where I was going with this. What early in your life was spirituality like for you? Because many queer people who find spirituality or have some form of a spiritual path were frequently not started on that path.
Yeah.
It's not the case for everyone, obviously, but like, what was your early spiritual path like?
So, spirituality was always a very important part of my life, and not because my parents or anybody else in my life instilled that in me. It's just I always like to say I was it was such a role reversal growing up where I would look at my parents and be like, "We got to go to church. Like, come on." Like because it was so important to me. And I was a weird kid where I didn't want to go to like the Sunday school. So I grew up in a household that was sort of non-denominationally Christian. My parents were both raised Roman Catholic, but pretty much left that aroundish the time I was born because I think they didn't really care one way or the other. And we moved a lot growing up. Like I moved a ton when I was a kid. And so it wasn't like, oh, well, we lived in the same house and we're part of a parish. Like we'd moved every couple years. And so we would just sort of randomly go to whatever church was nearby. So I went to Catholic churches, I went to Methodist and Lutheran churches. I mean, I lived in Tennessee for a while, so there was some, Southern Christian churches that we would go to, and I loved all of them.
Did you ever go to one of those like mega churches?
No, I will say now, my parents lived very briefly. This was after I was already an adult, but they lived in Dallas for 1 year and they couldn't stand it. And they had to get out of Texas. No, no offense to Texas. It just wasn't the place for them. But I think once or twice they went to a mega church and they were like, this was wild. Like they were like, I don't even know. I would love to go one day just to experience it. But
Yeah.
I never wanted, like I didn't like Sunday school that was sort of like puppets, and so like I was like no, I want to learn. Like I wanted to be like in basically a theology class. Like I just
Early on academic.
or exactly, I had no hope. Like I had no other option in life. I loved it. I remember this one time we had some like guest pastor, like a seminary student, come in, and he gave a sermon that I think everybody else in the church hated but me because he was so heady and so like, well, the history of this is, and I could have listened to him for hours. I loved it. So around the time I was probably 13, 14 is when I started to become more aware of my sexuality. Because up until that point, if I had
As
had
many do, start
as
to start to
yes,
be aware
exactly. Yeah,
then.
there's nothing like, like what? Like, yeah, like right around on schedule, as I'm kind of really rocketing my way through the early stages of puberty and everything. I think if I had had language for it up until this point, I would have said, oh, I'm asexual. Like, I didn't look at anybody and think like, oh, I want to date this person, or like I just didn't think about it. I didn't really want to have a relationship when I was a kid, like so many kids around me would do. So it just wasn't part of my radar. But around this time, I started to notice like, when I go to like, the fitness center with my family and like, me and my brother and my dad are in the locker room, I'm looking at all the guys. And I
Yeah.
when I was a kid, I would think like, oh, I'm just curious what I'm going to look like when I'm an adult. Like I'm just like, like I'm like, what an adult body looks like. I'm like, boy, I sure am looking a lot. Um,
That's so
and then
funny.
around this time, I started to become a little bit more aware of what gayness and queerness was as an identity.
Just like year-ish.
This was 2000, probably like
Got
1999,
it.
2000. So I was probably actually more like 14, almost 15. Like really up until this point, like I had been I've been masturbating and all these sorts of things, but I didn't even have
Yeah.
like fantasies. Like I didn't like think
You were
about
just like, this feels nice.
oh yeah, this is just like a way to start to explore my body. I didn't know at the time you could think about things and do that at the same time.
Yeah. You're like, weird.
Yeah, I was like, how about that? And so around this time, we were living in Iowa at the time, and this Lutheran church we were going to had this really beautiful, wonderful pastor minister, and then he left, and they got this other guy. And it was right around the time where it was like, oh, it's time for me to be confirmed, like to go through confirmation. And I would go
Hmm.
to these confirmation classes, and it was the first time I heard, like, in my face, someone talking about the sin of homosexuality and the sin of this and that. And I didn't even hear it and think, oh, he's talking about me. I really just heard it and thought, like, that no, that can't be right. Like that feels mean. That feels wrong. And I sort of started to notice around me, like, yeah, people aren't necessarily maybe clapping their hands and agreeing with him, but they're certainly not disagreeing with him either. And it was sort of the first moment of where I'm like, oh, what if this is all bullshit? Like, what if this is just,
Like dissonance around it.
yeah, like what are we doing? And so, I kind of gave my parents like, I don't know if I want to like do this. Like I don't know if I want to continue it. And they were just like, whatever. Like again, like they didn't care. They were like,
Cool.
yeah, whatever,
Rock
fine.
on.
Yeah. So So we kind of stopped going to church because I wasn't there being like, we got to go to church, because they could have cared less. And that really broke my heart because I mean, this thing was really important to me. And then at the same time, my freshman year of high school, I was at this little, I don't know, in whatever student activity I was in at this time. And a boy that was a year older than me, his name was Andrew, walked down the hall hand in hand with his boyfriend.
And you were like, what?
It was my ring of keys moment. Like it was like
Yeah.
I looked at him and I remember going home after that event and sitting in my room and being like, "Oh, that's me." I so much just started to make sense in my life. Like it was
Yeah.
such a like
The gears were like turning. You were like, wait a minute.
I'm just gay. I get it now. Okay. And then right around this time, like maybe a month or two later, we moved again. And so we moved to New Jersey and
Andrew was gone.
right, exactly. It's all gone. Um, and it was time to start over, and we didn't go to a church. Like we kind of were just like there was a sense of like enough, that's done. And so I sort of began
Enough.
this new phase of my life, understanding my queerness and my gayness and my LGBTness, but without any spiritual kind of major, at least up at that moment in my time, because again, my parents could have cared less, my brother could have cared less. I didn't want us to go because I felt kind of disillusioned from it. And I never felt like, oh, I got kicked out of church because I was gay. It was more of this isn't something I want to be a part of if I feel like there's just something not authentic or honest or real about it. Like these people don't know what they're talking about. I got to figure this out on my own.
Hmm. You were like, I don't feel this anymore.
Ex-
So,
exactly. Like
yeah.
it really was just like, like no, this is stupid. I can't listen to a bunch of old white straight men babble up there. Like whatever magic it held at that point was just like, oh, they lost it for me. I can't do this.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, essentially, what you're saying, or at least what I'm interpreting, is that once there was no longer a voice of love coming from the pulpit, you were like,
Mhm.
this is bullshit.
Basically, like, yeah, it was just
Yeah.
like it's just some guy complaining or like kind of just like meandering about nothing. Or, and this especially happened with again this one guy, like this fake emotion, sort of that like trying to emote up there. It's like, and I was in, of course, shocker, I was in theater and all these things, so I was like, no,
What?
can you believe it? And again, I was like, no, this isn't like he's not finding the moment, right? Like this isn't
Yeah.
real. This
It's
isn't
not landing.
exactly. Like he's not speaking from his heart. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing
You're like to
genuine.
the back of the room, Louise. Like,
Exactly. Exactly. I don't
so
think so. So I was like, I just there's nothing for me up there. I still had a deep yearning and searching within me for spirit, but I was like, this isn't the place I'm going to get it.
so you're in New Jersey now. And you're finishing high school, you're starting college. What's your
Mhm.
situation?
Yeah, so I moved to New Jersey and I did my sophomore, junior, senior year of high school in New Jersey. And really found my gayness, my queerness, my identity there, because there was this sense of like, well, I'm already new. It's not like people have known me their whole life, so like no one really has an opinion of me right now, one way or the other. And I'm only going to be here 3 years anyway, and then I'll go off to college. So sort of like, what's the point of trying to stay closeted or anything? Like it's only going to be a half minute anyway. So I was like, I'm just gonna do this. And so I was sort of out the whole time, and again involved in band and plays and musical and like really like sinking my teeth into like no, this is who I am. I'm a gay person. I'm a queer person. Watching Will and Grace every week. All the things. Uh,
Yes. That was
like
like for many people a North Star in the 90s, like and
what?
like early 2000s. I mean, Will and Grace was pre things like the L Word and what was the other one? The
Queer folk.
Yes, thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you. Like it was pre that. It was
it
really the
was.
first time other than Ellen,
Hmm.
the first time that you saw queerness on TV in a way that was, I don't want to say normalized, but very much normalized. Like it was just about a group of friends. Granted, like, and it was also one of the first times that a queer person was the primary story. They weren't
Exactly.
an add-on. They were
Yes.
like, this is about queer and allied lives. And it
Yes.
was the first time we saw that in a sitcom, certainly.
Hmm.
Because before that, the big deal was seeing someone like uh who was it on like Road Rules or Real Worlds? I
Oh
think his
gosh, I
name
can
was like
never.
Ricky or something, and he
Yes.
had AIDS or he was HIV positive. And that
Yes.
was like a major storyline on MTV at that point. And there was, of course, like Ricky in My So-Called Life, but he was a side character. He wasn't really like he wasn't
Hmm.
the Claire Danes.
Yeah.
So um
Exactly.
so it was
Um,
the first time that you really got to see queer people on display. And for someone who's also in the New York area, it was like, oh, that's right next door. Like, this is what's
right.
happening over there. Like,
Exactly. Exactly. It was
yeah.
sort of like, yeah, like I live on the East Coast now. Yeah, New York is an hour and a half train ride away. And like, look, yeah, like look at these. Yeah, look, Will is rich and successful and friends, and Jack is flamboyant and loved. People sort of look back on that show now and criticize it, which we can certainly do from our modern sensibilities. But that show at the time was major.
Yeah.
And frankly, it was something my mom would watch with me. And I think it probably helped her come to terms with the fact that she had not one but two gay sons, like
Just lucky, I guess.
yeah, yeah, exactly. They did everything right. And so yeah, it was sort of this moment of like my queer identity like took full occupation of my mind of like I'm gonna figure this out and I'm gonna determine who I am and sort of all the things that come as a young teen determining their sexuality and their identity.
By the way, can I just say something which is a little bit of a sidebar, but just it's
Always.
not fully a comment on Will and Grace, but it's a
Yeah.
comment on cultural relativism, which I think is
Yes.
frequently missed. Like, we'll look at a show from the early 2000s, such as Will and Grace,
Sure.
and make these comments about it. But at the time, there was nothing like that. And for many people, it was their only exposure to queerness.
Hmm.
And I I don't want to say like kids today have it good or anything like that because there's we have our own set of problems. Like
Sure.
we don't need to get talking about today's administration, but we really could. Like
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of problems with the environment around queerness today, but it's also you can't fully impart today's sensibilities on
Yes.
yesteryear's existence because I think generally most people are always doing the best with what they're equipped with at the time.
Yes.
And whenever a marginalized group is emerging or starting to develop their own advocacy or their own voice, like before that, before Will and Grace, at least socially, we were dealing with things like the AIDS crisis. We were right on the heels of that at that point, like 80s into the 90s and stuff like that. It was not what it was today. And I think when you look back on any form of uh, marginalized communities development or the emergence into media like we are today, like it just requires you to adjust your vision a little bit, like put on a different set of glasses.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more.
I want to say that.
No,
Off my soapbox now.
no, it's important. It's funny, like there's almost like we don't talk about this stuff. Like there's like time privilege, right? Like it's so easy to take what we know now, what we have, and look back at these things. Like, yeah, but like you weren't there. You're not looking at the complete context. Like, yeah, we sort of take for granted like shows like Modern Family and others where queer characters are front and center. Like this was the first one. The only other person I can ever think of was I'm really dating myself now. I don't know if you ever watched Soap.
Of
The same.
course.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. But like, Billy Crystal, that was a major moment. And yes, I watch old episodes of it, watch it now. And I'm like, oh, it can be so cringy and it can be so like, oh,
Yeah.
they thought he was going to have a gender affirming surgery because well, he's gay. So he must want to be a woman. And like, we can look at it and say, look how far we've come. But you have to look at the moment like that was groundbreaking.
I mean, I can say that as a gay person or someone who identified as gay, I'm more like queer identified now than
Mhm.
but that wasn't really the language. Like that's the other thing. We didn't have the language for so much of this then.
Mhm.
And so, or at least not readily available. Like
Yeah.
obviously the language always existed, but it
Yeah.
wasn't as widely digested or understood. And
Yes.
so I remember when I first was dealing with gayness and understanding what that meant for me, there was a large stretch of time where I was like, I think I want to be a woman. Like, I
Hmm.
think that
Right.
that's a trajectory for me. And even still to this day, like I'm now more in the realm of non-binariness, but
Mhm.
I still flirt with that and
Yeah.
flirt with the idea of like, what do I want my body to look like? How at home am I in this machine, in this meat suit?
Yes.
Like, so there's very
Yeah.
much, I think for many people, that's a lifelong question, even.
It's,
And
it is.
especially as we have a more refined version of what gender looks like today, right?
Yes.
Because
Absolutely.
gender and sexuality and sex and all that, they don't have to be what we once understood them to be in the rules of the like heteronormative binary. So as our understanding of it all becomes more refined, so does the way we portray ourselves or present ourselves to like our
Yes.
most authentic incarnation, let's say.
So true. No, I couldn't. I love it. Absolutely so. It is a lifelong process of discovery.
Yeah. So you're in New Jersey, you're watching Will and Grace,
Yeah.
you're loving New York City when
Yes.
you pop up there. And what at what point did your spiritual practice, and you can timeline this with like your other history points obviously as well, but
Sure.
at what point did you go like, okay, well this thing isn't for me. You've already kind of covered that. But what brought you to the next point of like your spiritual development? Like what point did you go like, oh, well, that doesn't work for me, but this, which I was not presented with or did not initially know,
Yeah.
is.
Yes. I can't remember exactly how this came into my orbit. Maybe one day I'll finally recall this memory, but the next sort of major development of my spirituality was discovering like Wicca and sort of neo-paganism and these sorts of
Yeah.
things. And again, I'm sitting here, even after you're asking me this question, I'm like, yeah, but how did I find out about it? Because again, to the kids listening, like this is pre-Google, this is pre-search engine. I remember
Yeah.
this was pre-podcast. Like there's so many ways that people can be exposed to information now that just didn't exist. So I'm like, how did I ever find out? But somehow this came into my orbit and I started to buy every book Scott Cunningham ever wrote. I bought like,
Uh,
I
Scott
know,
Cunningham.
I know exactly, which he was queer, wasn't he?
Yeah,
I thought
I
so.
believe
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. I'm pretty sure. I dove like deep, deep, deep into this. And did that for probably a good solid like 2 heavy years of like full moons and spell casting and reading these books and
Some
like
of us never leave.
some of well, I mean, I'll get to that. So and then again, there just came a point where not that I was like, oh, this isn't for me, but there was just like I kept hitting some kind of, I don't even want to say wall, but there was just something of like, I'm still not getting where I want to go, but this is definitely moving me forward. And so then I
It's like
went
there was more than this. There's
exactly.
this like there's call of like this more because not that or at least my perspective,
Mhm.
my BS, my personal belief system. Um,
Yes.
there's like you get to a point, many people get to a point in earth-based spiritualities, whether it be witchcraft or whatever. For you, it was witchcraft. For me, it was witchcraft as well.
Yes.
Um, where I was like, but there's a deeper truth. And it
Yes.
was like
Exactly.
this call. And I was like, what is that? What is that thing? And for me, it was always like, yes, I work with these deities that are historic or Hellenistic or
Mhm.
um, like Yoruba, like tribal based African deities,
Mhm.
whatever called to me or whatever appeared, however you want to think about that. I I've worked with like various deities, but there was this thing behind it that I could always feel of like, what is this underlying current or this truth or like whatever this thing is. And that was like what was very much a call for me.
Yes,
So
exactly. Exactly. No, thank you. You described it better than I ever could. So yeah, so there was just like, yeah, there's something here. I don't know where it's bringing me, and I can only get so much out of these books as a solitary practitioner and all these things, but I was not finding a coven in South Jersey, so there was just the sense of like I'm limited. So then I went to college. I went to Rutgers University in New Brunswick.
Coven of the cheesesteak.
Yeah, basically, right? I mean, who
Coven of the
knows?
Sea.
There probably is one now. So,
Oh, there's probably tons of covens in Philly. I know witches that live in Philly, so yeah.
so yeah.
But
Um, and I actually there was a Wicca group that would meet at this Unitarian church not too far, and I went to them maybe a year, and it just felt for again nothing against them, but it felt a little too house holder, straight people getting together once a month for a full moon ceremony to kind of dance around their altar and then be like, okay, let's go home. Like it felt very loving and it felt wonderful. And I thought these were wonderful people, but I was like, this isn't my community. This isn't my coven. This isn't my community. I need something. There's just something else again that's not. But I'm still searching. And so then while I was at Rutgers, I took yoga classes with this incredible yoga teacher named Gopali, and she would do classes in the university. And then she lived in the town right next to New Brunswick and had her own studio there. So then when I was able to, I would go to Highland Park and I would take these Iyengar classes with her, and I loved them. And then one day she said, "Oh, my teacher is coming to do a kirtan." And I
and you're
said,
like, what's that?
What's that? What's kirtan? I'd never heard of it before. I was probably 20 at the time. And she said, just come. So I go to a tiny studio. So I went to her little studio that's like built in her backyard, and there's so many of us. And there's just this sort of unprepossessing woman in the front with this instrument I'd never heard of before called a harmonium. And this
That's the
young,
thing that you squeeze, right?
yep, exactly right. It's like an accordion. It's like a Southeast Asian accordion, basically. But I'd never heard of this before. I'd never seen one. And then this young man sitting next to her with a drum I'd never seen before called a tabla. And I'm just like, I don't know
Those are
what
the
that.
metal ones, right? They're like they kind of that like
No, not the hand drum. It's like
no,
it's
they're like they're not big, right? They're like these little
yeah, like you can kind of put them right here, but I think
yeah.
his had like had some kind of skin or some kind of fabric over it. But I'm like I'm just sitting there like okay, like I don't know what's happening, but we're gonna do it because like we would do a little chanting at the end of our yoga classes or whatever. But and then Susan, her name is Susan Green. She pumped the bellows of that harmonium, and I heard this sound come out of it, and I just went. I was just
Yeah.
transported, and so we did this kirtan and it ends and I just was like I don't know what this is but I have got to learn what this is because this is I don't know why that felt like a homecoming but I was like I have to know what this is. I have to know what this is. So I bought all these CDs and all the things and I would like find everything I could at this new website that was just created called YouTube of everything that I could ever find.
What's that?
What's that? Oh, I literally went to a friend my freshman year. I went to their dorm and they were like, "Oh my God, look at this thing!" And they pulled up this website none of us had heard for called YouTube and looked at some ridiculous cartoon and we're like, "Whoa, what is this?" So
Can I just also say something
please.
interesting? We're just gonna jump backwards for a moment. So I think when you're talking about in the timeline, which is like early 2000s,
Mhm.
specific like more so in the 90s, especially in New York. Not that I even remember this because in the 90s in New York, I was in my teens and I shouldn't have been there alone, but I maybe was a couple times.
Exactly.
Um, but the tradition of Wicca and paganism and witchcraft and neo-paganism and all of that, it wasn't as nuanced as it is now, again, so
Mhm.
it requires that lens. But there was a real uh focus on divine masculine, divine feminine,
Sure.
passing the tradition from male to female, female to male. It was
Mhm.
very initiatory through many times like a Gardnerian type of tradition or things like that. And I remember loosely in the early 2000s because that was when I came into like my witchiness. But I remember a lot of conversation around like what tradition were you initiated into? How was
Right.
this initiation taken?
Mhm.
Blah blah blah, all this stuff, and it was very god and goddess centric, which
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
as a queer person, I always saw myself more related to the role of the goddess anyway. So
Yes.
I was like this. I still don't fit into the system,
Exactly.
and so there was. I think also when you are what when you get to a certain point in your practice, many people feel this pull towards like a non-dualistic aspect, or
Hmm.
like what is this thing behind the two things? Like what is this thing behind it all, which you kind
Hmm.
of alluded to earlier. So when you are practicing in a dualistic system and you feel the pull to the thing behind the thing, or like the man behind the curtain
Yeah.
for all intents and
Yes.
purposes, and
Yes.
then you have, which by the way, it's not a man, just saying that, but um, I
Need a
just
little
needed
Wizard
to,
of Oz in here, so
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. When you are in more of an Eastern tradition, their thing is non-dualism. Their thing is
Exactly.
non-duality. Their whole approach to it is it comes from this one source thing.
Hmm.
And I think for Western people, that's a real like, what do you mean there's not? What do you mean there's no
Yes.
thing? Like
Yes.
and if you can be brought to a moment like the one you're talking about where all of a sudden you experience even tangentially this form of unity consciousness or like oneness with all things or a non-dualistic glimpse, all of a sudden your whole world goes like, what was that? Like how was I the grass and the sun at the same
Yeah,
time? What's happening?
exactly.
And so so it's really interesting that you expressed that moment in that way.
Yeah.
So without without the use of psychedelics or anything, can you
Yes.
recall when you said your head popped off or your
Yeah.
lid flipped? What was that experience like for you? What was um that moment of awareness like in your body? What were the sensations like? What were the thoughts, if you can recall?
From what, yeah, yeah. First and foremost, I think was probably one of the first introductions in my life to what it was to be truly present and still. Like the idea of kind of being like rooted into the nowness of like there's nothing that exists outside of right now. So there it was definitely an early introduction to mindful stillness to me of like just the present and that's it. Like all there is this sound and this reverberation. And that's all that exists right now. I remember just feeling very alive, like my body felt very electrified, but again, very still. And there was again total confusion, but not in a bad way because I didn't my introduction to like again like Sanskrit practices and mantra and kirtan was so early and so limited and so we're doing these long mantras and so like I'm kind of just like mumbling along to what I can know and little bits and trying to pick it up with each repetition of it. So I just remember just being like so like eager and like just like so present. Like I have to pay attention. I got to listen and again for up until
Again,
that
ever the academic.
exactly. God help me exactly. Um, and again, and also I was in this room full of people singing and chanting and all kind of doing the same thing. And I hadn't really had that sort of congregational kind of spiritual experience in so long. So there was also, I just remember this like, we're all doing this together. We're all here together doing this same thing. And that just felt so cool. And up until that point, music and sound wasn't something I really associated much with spiritual practice because churches, hymns and songs, and some of them I really liked because I just thought they were fun songs, and but I never felt like music as ministry. Like I up until that point, I had never had like no music and sound as a way to actually access the divine and access spirit. And this was really my very first time in this life of like, oh, this is actually an entry point in this music or these mantras, these sacred words and sounds. Like, oh, this is actually a way to access deity. This is a way to access spirit. It's not just pretty cool music in the background. Like this is actually a practice. This is a technology into touching God. And so that really blew my mind of like, oh, this could be an actual practice people do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what so you get to this point where you're like, wait, it's a thing. Or
Yeah.
it's not a thing, but it's like, you know what I mean?
No.
It's accessible. It's
Yes.
something I can feel. So what was the next move for you then?
I mean, I must have been God. I must have been so insufferable. Like I just chanted constantly, and like bought these CDs, and I would just listen to these things on my iPod all the time. I mean, I was just
Were you a
constantly.
big fan of what was her name in I'm sure she's still like a thing. I forget. Mm, she
Deva
would
Premal.
she like wears the white turban. She's this
Oh,
white lady.
Snatam Kaur.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
She was
I
like,
still love her.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
remember seeing her CDs like everywhere though.
everywhere. I mean, oh, and rest in peace, Natural Wonder. You know, like it, like I just think of that old store at the mall, Natural Wonder. I don't know if you ever went to one, but
I
like
remember like East Meets West.
yes, oh yeah, it's like so, it's like incarnate, exactly. So like,
That was the other thing we have to address. Things like tarot cards were not everywhere like they are now.
okay,
All
funny,
of the like
you know,
Spencer's was where you could get like a
yeah,
thing of tarot cards, maybe Hot Topic sometimes. Like they were alts. Like you had to find a metaphysical store that was just that. You couldn't just roll up to Barnes and Noble and be like, "I'll take a Rider-Waite-Smith, I'll take a cat tarot, I'll
yeah, I'll
take
take an
like
Oracle goddess and a spirit warrior. Like I
yeah."
remember, I remember one time my aunt was visiting us and she stayed in my room and she saw my tarot deck and she probably thought I was like a Satanist. Like it was the idea of like, what is this? Like you can get these at Target now. Like they're just everywhere. The way that these occult forms of practice have just permeated kind of day-to-day society is fascinating to witness. Absolutely.
I think it I mean, for better or worse, for
Yeah,
because like, there's
exactly.
I think a lot of it had to do with media and like movies and things like The Craft and Practical Magic and Simply Irresistible and just these
Hmm.
like 90s and early 2000s films about empowered women who were witches
Buffy the
that were
Vampire
just
Slayer,
yeah,
Willow.
Buffy. Exactly, like a Charmed. Charmed was another
Oh,
one.
oh my God,
Like
Charmed, exactly.
and just they became these culturally relative moments
Hmm.
post really post the resurgence of witchcraft in the 90s because
Hmm.
that's when it became like big kind of underground socially and then like
Yes.
late 90s early 2000s there was this influx so like witches weren't just Glinda anymore, you know what I
Yes,
mean?
exactly.
Because
No,
at
you're so
first
right.
for many people it was Glinda and the Wicked Witch
Hmm.
and Witch Hazel on Looney Tunes, like those were those were our exposure to witches early on. and
Yes.
and then we had things come through like The Craft and Practical Magic and all of this stuff and all of a sudden the conversation around witchcraft changed. They weren't just these like hideous creatures or these women in ball gowns. They were people
They're
who
people.
had
It's
family
religion.
tradition and
Yes.
it was more than just what it was perceived as. And then I think that was really the gateway to it appearing much more in standard stores like
Yes.
Barnes and Nobles and Target and things
Totally.
like that.
Because there was the demand, right? There was the market demand of like, yeah, like people want books on this, and they just became everywhere so fast. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Llewellyn.
Yeah.
Llewellyn
Oh
Press.
my Llewellyn. Oh my God. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's so
Witch's
funny.
Almanac, all that stuff. Love it. Thank you.
Yes. True. Exactly. Um, so yeah, so this began a very long, I mean, this is still a very big part of my life, but like this really catapulted me into this sort of, and then I started to study with Susan. So she would do in the Princeton area. And so I get through college and I start to work. And I was working in Princeton at the time at at this hospital in Princeton. And so then Monday nights for years, she would have this Monday night sitting, Susan Green, at different places, but in the Princeton area. And I just sat with her for as long as I could for years until I kind of left that area of learning about this type of yoga, this which she calls Devi yoga, the yoga of the mother goddess, which is all about not just mantra and chanting and singing, but like poetry and art and like really seeing again these as spiritual practices, which again to me was just mind blowing at the time. And it really changed the trajectory of so much of my life then and my spiritual pursuits because I was like, this is it. This is the thing I've been waiting for. And yet I still feel like I'm by myself. Like I'm chanting at home, or maybe sometimes I would go to as many kirtans as I could. But they begin, they end, and we all disperse. It wasn't like a ongoing community. And it was just like, okay, again, I'm just a solo practitioner, and that's fine. But like this, I've at least touched into this thing that is really resonating with my heart. And that was really it for me for years. For years, that was like my main practice. And then I started to meet people at the Jersey Shore area because I lived at the Jersey Shore for about a decade. And through, again, metaphysical stores and all these things, I started to hear these names mentioned all the time. Adam and Al, Adam and Al. Did you go to the pipe ceremony with Adam and Al? Did you like who's Adam and Al? So
The
who are
fuck are
these
they?
people? Exactly. So
Yeah.
I found out they were a gay couple that owned a metaphysical store. Unfortunately, it ended up burning down, and the rumor is another metaphysical store in the area like burnt their store to the ground. So who
Oh my
knows?
God, that's
I
wild.
know. But I was sort of like, oh, they're two gay men and they do shamanistic spiritual practice. And I was like, this is really interesting. And so I finally met one of them. I met Al because at the time I was leading kirtans at this place at the Jersey Shore. Unfortunately, no longer exists, but this little metaphysical place, and they would do tarot card classes and they would do crystal classes and pendulum classes. And I started to do for a while there, I would lead kirtans there. And Al came to one. And I was like, oh, you're Al. You're the Al of Adam and Al that I always hear about. Oh,
You're the infamous Al.
exactly. And I was like, I've heard about you. So I went to him and I was like, I've never had a shamanistic healing experience before, but that sounds very interesting. Would you do a session with me? So I did this session with him and he brought a lot of sound healing into it, which I thought was really interesting. I was like, this was it, again, just kind of click something. And I was like, huh, what is this exactly? And so I
Mm,
started again, read a little bit about it, and I'm like, okay, like, this is interesting. I can't fully wrap my head around it, but this is really interesting. And then I started to do pipe ceremonies at their house with his partner, Adam, who would do the I was like, again, like I don't really know what this is, but this is really interesting. And it was a way to learn more about like Native American indigenous forms of shamanistic practice and spiritual practice. And the fact that again these gay men were leading it, it's like this is cool because up until this point it has been straight women leading all these communities and these circles I've been in. God love them, but I was like, where are the gay men? Where are gay people, even lesbians? Like, just give me
yeah.
somebody. So
Yeah. Let me
then
see myself there.
exactly, and sort of again that very hetero binary kind of way. And so that was a really cool moment. And then I would again I would do some workshops with them and some other things. And I was like, this really interesting, but I still got to learn more about this. And then this one night, I had this dream. And in this dream, I was stirring this big old cauldron and I was throwing all this like plant material into the cauldron. And I kept saying, I need to make the ayahuasca. I need to make the ayahuasca. I need to. And I woke up from
Without
that.
knowing what it was.
No, absolutely. I had read a
Wild.
I know. I had read The Way of the Shaman, which is a very famous book in this, and even as I was reading, I had read it years before, but I was like, oh, this guy drinks this thing called the soul vine. I've never heard it. And kind of almost cursorily just going through it. I was like, whoa. And so for days go by, I'm like, I can't shake this dream. So I reached out to Al and I said, you're in this world and I sort of know what this thing is. Do you do this? Do you offer this? He's like, no, I've done it before. I've worked with it in Peru where it comes from. Adam and I don't facilitate it, but we actually have a mutual connection, a mutual friend who's involved with a community who does this. You should reach out to him. And I said, who? And he told me who. And I was like, get out. So I reached out to this mutual friend. And I said, I think I need to talk to you about this. And so we talked once or twice. And he said, well, I can do sort of an email introduction to the people who run this, right? These things are very under the radar,
Yeah.
underground.
I was gonna
Um,
point that out. Like anyone that's interested in participating in this, it's a very I've not participated yet, but it is a very interesting process because
it is.
it's almost like finding someone who practices the Golden Dawn. It's just as challenging. You have to know someone who knows someone who can introduce you.
It's
It's
fascinating.
it's
Yeah,
never a straight path to it.
unless you're going to physically just go to South America,
And be like, where is it?
it's right. But yeah, like, and I was like, I wouldn't even begin. Up until this point in my life, I'd never worked with a psychedelic. I was not a partier, so it's like I wouldn't even know where to start. But so he said, like, I'll do this email introduction to these people who organize and run this community here in the States. Um, and they'll vet you because they want to make sure that you're going to be respectful about it. They also want to make sure you're not going to get them in trouble and all these different things.
Oh, I didn't realize you did it here because
Yes.
I mean
Yeah.
I think I know someone that does it here, but that's
Yeah.
also very uncommon. Like even
It's
yeah,
hard. It's hard to find. And so I had my meeting with one of the people who ran this community and still do. And they said, well, we're going to be actually in New Jersey. They're not based in New Jersey, but we're actually going to be doing a retreat in New Jersey, a 2-night retreat. So there'll be a Friday night ayahuasca ceremony and a Saturday night ayahuasca ceremony in like 2 months or 3 months, whatever it was. Would you like to go? And I said, absolutely.
I'm in.
I'm in. I don't. I had read some books, and what again really interested me was this friend of mine who kind of gave me this pathway in, recommended 2 books for me to read, written by an ayahuasquero in Peru named Javier Reguero, who was himself a queer man. He has unfortunately since passed away, but at the time he was alive, and he wrote. So I read his books, and again, the idea that this was a queer man who wrote these books, who led these ceremonies in Peru, and then I show up at this campground in like central-ish New Jersey. And I'm like, I really don't know what to expect, but I see my friend there.
I have no idea what's happening.
I think I bit off probably a little more than I realized, but here I am. And what really fascinated me is as more and more people were coming in for that first night, I was like, oh, I'm queer. Oh, you're queer. Oh, you're also queer. Oh, this is your partner. And I was like, the people running the organization, which I didn't realize at the time, that the 2 people that run this community are married to each other, 2 women. So it's like, oh, so the facilitators are queer. And I remember sitting in that circle and looking around and being like, everybody in this room is gay, is trans, is queer. I was like, this is really interesting. Like, I'm about
Yeah.
to take my first sip of ayahuasca in a room. I'm pretty sure that was completely queer, or if not
I can
completely,
like feel that excitement in
it
me
was
just thinking
amazing.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I drank that first cup and I had my first ayahuasca night, which was insane and very intense and very powerful. And I was just like on a roller coaster going a million miles an hour. Like at one point I turned into a tree that was puking up rainbows. Like I just went through the
I see that
whole
for you.
you think, yeah, exactly. It shows a little bit. So and I remember it ended like I get up on my newborn baby deer legs and I like stumble into the kitchen part of this camp and everyone's like talking, talking, talking. I'm just like, and like finally this one woman who's so sweet, she was like, honey, sit down. I'm gonna get you some tea. I didn't sleep that night. Like I just spent all night like, I can't do this. I can't do a second night. I can't do a second night. I spent the whole day like walking around the campground the next day, just like I made a mistake. I this was a mistake. I shouldn't be here. I gotta go. But my friend will be so mad at me. He vouched for me. And the one rule is don't leave until it's over.
Yeah.
So drinking that second cup that Saturday night, I was like, like drinking the second cup. And I had a very intense, but actually a very beautiful night that second night. And I remember driving home the next day, like on that Sunday, and saying, well, I did that. I'll never do it again, but I did it.
Yeah.
And then maybe a week or 2 later, they sent out an email saying, "Hey, we're doing a 1-night ceremony in December in West Virginia. If anybody's interested." And I was like,
Okay.
"Do one more. I'll do one more. Got to do the free. Got to do the triad. I'll do one more." Did that one, and I've never stopped. And that one, so ayahuasca is seen in Peru as it's just so she is a goddess. She is, I mean, this is a slice of ayahuasca vine, of Cappy vine right here. She is my goddess. I love her so much. I am a devotee of hers. Um, I could talk to the next 5 hours about it, but like I left that third one being like, I'm supposed to keep coming to this. It scares the absolute hell out of me. I don't know what's about to happen, but I am supposed to keep coming. And then I had then my next ceremony, my fourth ceremony, which I always call my hell ceremony. I went into the depths of my gay shame. So ayahuasca is seen as a purging medicine. The idea is that she loves us, she's mother, she's grandmother, but she kind of smacks you in the face of like, let's get our act together. And
Snap out
she
of it.
basically, so she was hitting me on the head with a wooden spoon that night of like, we got some work to do. And she took me to the core of my internalized gay shame, my internalized homophobia, all that stuff. It was a horrifying night. It was terrifying. And I left that ceremony sobbing my eyes out, saying, I will never, ever do this again. I'm done.
So what made you
And
go
it,
back after that?
so it took me about 8 months after that. And then they were like, hey, we're doing a week long retreat. Would you make the food for it? And I was like, Okay. And there's going to be three ceremonies during this. So I was like, okay, I'm just working the event. I will work the
Yeah.
event. I'm here to volunteer and serve. But then, sure enough, that first ceremony comes around. I said, give me the smallest drop possible. And so I don't think I ever even dropped in that first one, but it was enough just to be like, okay, I didn't die. Everything's okay.
Yeah.
So the
You're
next
in the
ceremony during that,
frequency.
yeah, right. I was like, give me a little more. So I went enough to have kind of a medicine experience, kind of a process. Was like, okay, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. And then the third one, I was like, give me a full dose. I drink it, and not
Give me a
that much.
double jack.
Yeah, basic. Yeah, give me double Jack and Coke. Let's do it. And like not that much is happening. I was like, oh God. So I go up, and I give me another cup, and I drink my second cup, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, okay, everything's fine. Everything's fine. And then my whole world dissolves, and I find myself in this temple, this big, beautiful brown temple. And there's these women dancing in the temple. And I'm just sort of looking around at these like sacred women dancing this temple. And I look up at the ceiling, and the ceiling disappears. And this light comes into me. And I knew at that moment it was God, it was spirit, it was the divine, it was the one behind it all, just poured into my heart. And I have this experience, and I come out of it, and I was like, I like crawl out of the room, and I'm sitting outside, and I had that moment of like, I'm connected to all things. I'm every tree, I'm every rock. I could open my legs and give birth to the world right now. Thank you. Because I've been waiting for this my whole life.
Life. Yeah.
Um, and I left. I was like, okay, I'm ready to come back, and I haven't stopped since. And so I've worked with ayahuasca for years now. I've worked with psilocybin for years, and then just this past summer, I went to Peru for the first time to work with ayahuasca in the actual indigenous community that it comes from, working with Shipibo shamans, where this comes from, which was itself just a life-changing, powerful, beautiful experience. And one of the interesting things that has come out to try to bring all this to some sort of point is in my last medicine ceremony that I had, ayahuasca is seen as this beautiful snake, and I had this tattoo for her on my leg as this snake, and she came to me as this vibrant, iridescent rainbow snake, just all around me, and I'm just staring at her, and I finally looked at her and I said, Madre, am I meeting queer Madre right now? And she looked at me and she said, yes. And then I had this gorgeous, gorgeous ceremony, this beautiful night of like, you and me are on a journey now, and it's going to be in the form of queer plant medicine and queer spirituality and all these things, but through this queer lens. And it has been incredible. So, at 40 years old, I feel like I am really deeply rooted not only in my spiritual practice and my spiritual community, but the idea of like, no, as a queer person talking about spirituality from a queer perspective for queer people, queering spirituality, not trying to find my place as a queer person in a spiritual community that tends to be mostly heterosexual and cisgendered.
So as a I don't want to
Mhm,
I don't want to like impose the title of like a queer spiritual leader on you, but as a person who is queer,
mhm.
who is actively working towards queering spiritual spaces, what does that mean for you in terms of holding and creating safe spaces for queer people to be spiritual? And also, where do you see yourself in this role in, say, like 5 years from now? And
Mhm.
after this, we're gonna close the interview after this.
Yes.
So we're just gonna like create this container for the future version of yourself, how you view this developing, and what that means for you moving forward.
So for me, queer spiritual, creating these spaces first and foremost is creating a space where queer people know it is okay to be spiritual. I think that many, especially those that maybe come from Abrahamic traditions, Christianity, Judaism, etc., almost feel like, no, religion, spirituality, these practices aren't for me. They kicked me out or they're not welcoming to me. So therefore, that's not part of my life. That's not something I'm supposed to do. And I think we as queer people, we're the shamans. I think we as I love the indigenous idea behind queerness is two-spirited, right? Like we're here to show people that we don't have to live in a binary and that we can live a life of, like we were saying earlier, of self-discovery. Like, so I think we're the spiritual leaders. Like queer people, we're here to show like the mystery behind what we perceive as reality. And I think it is our birthright to come back to deep, rich spiritual practice. And so I try to first and foremost like let queer people know like this is okay. You're not forgiving, condoning, etc. Anti-queer, anti-gay practices of different religious traditions. Like it's not about saying like, well, it's all okay, it's all love. Like, no, we're gonna like that is a battle still to be fought and to be fixed. But in the meantime, like this is you're allowed to do this. You're allowed to be a queer Jewish person, Christian person, Muslim person, Hindu person, Buddhist, whatever it is, shaman, like you're allowed to exist as a queer person, not just, oh, I'm a Christian who happens to be queer, or I'm a Jew that happens to be queer. Like, no, I'm a queer Jew, I'm a queer Christian, I'm a queer Muslim, I'm a queer Buddhist. Like, we're allowed to bring this first and foremost. And I think the other thing that I really try to do in my work with people with this, whether it's one-on-one or in workshops or other thing, is queer as non-binary as like, no, we can draw from all these beautiful traditions.
Yeah.
And seek the wisdom in all of them. And it doesn't have to be, well, I guess I'm Hindu now because I like chanting, so I have to be like, no, that's okay. Like we can have this more expansive approach to spiritual practice and discover what I think that means to each of us individually, that doesn't have to be so rooted in, but I'm this or that. I'm Christian or I'm this. I'm like we don't have to bog ourselves down with those rules and those boundaries. I think like we can find our path authentically, whether that's discovering my gender identity and expression or my spiritual identity and expression. Like we can experiment with it over
I
time.
th I think also just like politically,
Mm.
spiritually, when the system is not made with you in mind,
Hmm.
that means you're not here to shrink to fit the system, you're here to expand the
Yeah,
system.
I love
And
that.
so I think that queerness in general, if you're a queer person, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, it is an inherently political activity and it is an inherently spiritual activity
Yes.
because whether whatever you choose to believe about incarnation or coming into this form, we chose to come in when we did. And the whole point of being here is not necessarily comfort. Like that's a nice part of it, but
Yes.
the friction is kind of why we're here. And
Hmm.
so if you're a person where the world was not necessarily made with you as like an idea of what is acceptable or appropriate or whatever, you're not necessarily here to shrink into the definition of digestible. You're here to expand the boundaries of what is possible.
Yeah.
Because, in my opinion, my belief is that there are two choices. There's like love and fear. And even still, between those two choices, fear is just love experiencing the boundaries of itself. Fear
Mm.
is saying, is it safe enough for me to explore into this? Is it safe enough for me to move into this space? So really, it's all love experiencing itself, and we can really go into a non-dualistic conversation about that one day. But
Yes.
is there anything you want to say before we close out?
Oh gosh. What do I say? I have no idea.
If someone wanted to contact you for like advice or doing some type of a ceremony or anything like that, how would they reach out to you? How would they feel compelled to you? What would be the best way for them to do that?
Thank you for giving me like Anthony. Maybe say this right now. So I appreciate it. So people can find me. My website is dranthonydissen.com, or you can find me on Substack at Queering Spirituality.
We love it. Thank you so much, Anthony, for joining us today. You were our first conscious conversation, and I'm so thankful it was you.
Thank you, June. I'm so happy to have been the first. I love you so much. Thank you for letting me be here.
I love you too. Okay. Wake bye bye to everyone. Bye.